It has been a strange start to Wimbledon, what with the flying ants and players throwing coins in the general direction of umpires. We got a live report from the All England Club on the way. Plus, we're going to handicap some of the trade scenarios swirling around Melo. But first, some news on why Chauncey Billups decided not to take the Cavs front office job. And for that, we got Chris Haynes and the undefeated's Mark Spears, who have an article up on ESPN.com about all this. And Chris joins us now. What were you able to find out, Chris, about why the negotiations broke down?
Well, the league sources told myself and Mark Spears that the initial offer on the table for Chauncey Billups to take over the Cavaliers president of basketball operations position was 1.5. Then it was boosted up to $2 million annually. But for proper context, for most of the president of basketball operations positions, the starting rate annually is around $4 million. So that was about a $2 million drop off if Chauncey Billups were to take on that position. And there were other factors that led to Chauncey, not accepting it. He spoke with Mark Spears about that last week. We tried to reach out to Billups regarding this story, and he declined to comment on it. So he was not used as a source in this. And we wish we would have been able to talk with him about it. But it was just interesting to find out how much or how little Dan Gilbert, the Cavaliers owner, was willing to fork out for their top leader of front office basketball operations. Yeah, a low ball offer there. But is that kind of what David Griffin was making as well in the role? Is it Dan Gilbert just sort of pays that for the GM possession? Yes, David Griffin was making a little bit under $2 million. And you have to remember, that was as the role of GM. President of basketball operations, that's a higher title. Griffin was seeking that title along with more power within the organization. So it's well known that the Cavaliers, Cleveland, Dan Gilbert does not fork over top dollar for the head office of the front office. So it was, like I said, it was a little bit interesting to find out those were the numbers offered to Chauncey, because I know a lot of people throwing out there, well, Chauncey had no basketball experience, but look, Rob Pelinka had no front office basketball experience. He's making about $5 million annually. And then Phil Jackson, of course. So it was clearly a low ball offer. But Chauncey Billups, like I said, there was other factors that played into, that came into play. And certainly, I know he loves his ESPN job here. So, it was just an unfortunate situation, because I think most people feel like he's going to be a great executive in this league. Yeah, very highly thought of in the NBA. You talked about other factors, maybe LeBron and his contract could be a factor for some people. He's only got one more year remaining on his deal with the Cavs. How does that play into all of this? Well, I was told that, and Mark Spears as well. He was told, matter of fact, he told Mark Spears last week that he did not speak to LeBron James at all during that process. LeBron James' status as a Cavalier moving forward past next season did not play a factor at all in his decision. Look, to be able to come on and take on, to be the leadership of the basketball front office within the NBA is a privilege and an honor. And so Billups looked at from that standpoint, not who was necessarily on the roster right now. But, they didn't have any conversations. That's just the truth of the matter. All right, Chris Haynes giving us some insight into what went down between Chauncey Billups and Dan Gilbert for that job as the president of basketball operations. Again, a piece up on ESPN.com right now about that. Thank you, Chris. Let's bring in our Cavs reporter now, Dave McMenamin. Dave, how would you describe the state of the Cavaliers front office to date?
David, there's a bit of disarray, but you had to give credits to the guys who have been left over once the team parted ways with David Griffin. Kobe Altman, the assistant GM, who's really been acting as the interim GM. I spoke to a prominent agent last week, and I said, who are you dealing with when you make calls to the Cavs? He said, certainly Kobe Altman and Dan Gilbert. And then you have to give credit to Mike Gansey, who was the D-League, now G-League, Executive of the Year with the Canton Charge. He kind of got a call up, and now he's sitting in the big seat right alongside Kobe Altman. And, I spoke to some people in the Cavs front office this week, and the mentality is just put our head down, try to do good work. We'll worry about titles, we'll worry about raises and everything of the sort afterwards. But right now there's a task to do, and that's trying to make the Cavs good enough to compete with the Golden State Warriors better than they did in this year's NBA Finals.
We've heard you mention Kobe Altman a lot. Why not just promote him and make him the general manager?
One source described what's going on right now as kind of an interview, on the fly, an extended interview. He might not actually sit down and hand his resume over to Dan Gilbert and talk about his qualifications. The proof is in the pudding, and how he's conducted himself certainly has impressed people within the organization I've spoken to. And again, his mentality, the mentality actually of the entire front office group that is remaining, is not licking their wounds. It's not, acting in a state of shock, because it was kind of jarring to go through this process, as Chris Haynes just laid out. David Griffin gets let go. The top candidate who had been identified by Dan Gilbert tells the franchise no thanks. Meanwhile, there's still calls being made. There's still long hours being put in. And Kobe Altman, even though he's only 34 years old, I think has shown a level of maturity and savviness in this role thus far.
Hey, is this an attractive position? I mean, I don't know what Dan Gilbert's like to work for, but it doesn't seem like there's this slew of names coming up. Is it an attractive position for guys around the league?
Listen, there's only 30 of these jobs in the NBA. There are a slew of people, I should say, out there in the sport that would love a shot at a team that already has 3 straight NBA Finals appearances under its belt, and at least in the short term is built to compete for a championship. But if you are someone like Chauncey Billups, who's already had 15-plus year NBA career, you're sitting on a lot of money as long as you took care of it and invested it well. Why take this risk? Chauncey Billups was going to have other opportunities. He interviewed with the Atlanta Hawks before he interviewed with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he also has a paying gig at ESPN right now. There are going to be people out there that, either it's a younger person like Kobe Altman, who they're champing at the bit for a chance to jump at that job, or perhaps someone trying to get back in the game. I mean, there are some prominent guys out there right now, Mitch Kupchak, Sam Hinkie. I think basketball is in their blood, and that could perhaps be the next step for the Cavs. But right now, I don't see any sort of urgency from the organization to find a replacement for Chauncey. It's using the guys that they have in place and trusting guys like Mike Yancey and Kobe Altman. But the bigger question to me is Dan Gilbert now positioning himself to be a Jerry Jones-type owner moving forward?
Well, that would be interesting. Meanwhile, the Cavs have been awfully quiet this offseason. I know they don't have a lot of cap space. Are there any remaining names on the market that Cleveland could target?
Yeah, so here's some names for you, David. I mean, they have the mid-level exception worth about $5.2 million. Now, the market is starting to dry up, so perhaps these names I'm going to mention to you, they could go after. You got a guy like Thabo Sefolosha from the Atlanta Hawks. The Cavs want to add two-way players, so Sefolosha is certainly a 3-and-D guy. C.J. Miles from the Indiana Pacers. Vince Carter, now he's up there. He's over 40 years old, but again, this is what they had to look at in terms of veteran minimum. And then maybe even another guy from the Indiana Pacers, Monte Ellis, who was waived today. There's some instant scoring off the bench, and we saw how poorly the Cavs bench played in the finals when the Warriors were bringing in waves of guys who just kept putting it on the Cavs. Perhaps there's a flyer that could be taken on Monte, even though Monte will start the season under a suspension for substance use.
All right. Interesting times for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Our Cavs reporter Dave McMenamin filling us in on all of that. Two quarterbacks in the news for different reasons. Derek Carr is getting paid, while Dak Prescott may be getting into trouble. Darren Ravel with the latest there. It's all clover now. Gordon Hayward is going to be a Celtic, but the C's aren't done making moves. Remote Sports business reporter Darren Ravel. It's interesting, Darren, how the Raiders' move to Las Vegas actually is going to benefit Carr financially. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically, David, if you look at California's state income tax, that's 13.3% on top of what you're paying federally. And so that's the largest state in the nation as far as the biggest state income tax. And then you're going to Nevada, which was one of those states that have zero state income tax. And obviously, that's going to be a big savings. So the Raiders kind of played it in that while they're giving him less dollars, he's actually going to net more as long as they get to Nevada. So say they get to Nevada in 2019, they're giving him something like $20 million in that deal, and he's going to make more than what they're giving him the year before in California, $22.5 million. But because he has to pay that California state tax, he's going to be netting more off $2.5 million less the next year, again, as long as they get to Nevada in 2019.
All right, there you go. So you move one state over and you save a bundle on taxes there, and good for Derek Carr as he continues to move forward. All right, so we got another quarterback in the news, and that is Dak Prescott being accused of using a machine to sign his autographs. What more can you tell us about this?
So the way this went down was there was a redemption card, and Dak actually signed these, or was given these things to sign. And essentially what happened was a couple people who had gotten these then gave it to Beckett Grading Services to grade these cards to say, okay, let's put these in cases and say this is an authentic Dak Prescott autograph. Unfortunately, the folks at Beckett then came in and said, well, we're going to refuse these because we don't think these are real. We think that these were done by a machine. We think these were done by essentially auto pen, and Dak didn't really sign these. So they rejected them, and that started this whole controversy back to Panini, the company that asked him to sign them. What happened here? And we have, 24 hours later, gotten no response from Panini, the card company. We've gotten no response from Dak Prescott, nor his marketing agent or his regular agent, as to what happened. All we know is Panini sent the cards. They got the cards back. The people who got these cards sent their signed cards in, and the people who authenticate the autographs said these autographs are no good. So obviously, this is a shot at the industry, and until we hear from Dak and Panini, we kind of don't know what's going on here.
Let me break this down. Is the finger pointed specifically at Dak, or could someone else be at fault here if indeed these charges are true?
Well, the way it works is they send the marketing agent the cards. The marketing agent then presumably has the player sign them. Now, could it be possible that the marketing agent or some agent got these cards, used the auto pen, thought it was a good idea, and then sent it back? Yeah, possibly, but Panini, the card company, in each time they get a shipment, they put in that shipment a paper that is essentially an affidavit saying, I, Dak Prescott, signed these, and then it is witnessed. So, again, somehow it falls under Dak here, but I guess we can say there's a possibility that maybe he had no idea about this. But Beckett Grading Services have put their name on the line to say, we do believe these are indeed faked. They are done by a machine. They are not done by hand. And so at least, listen, those guys do this for a business, and they're willing to say they're not real. And until we hear from Dak or his agents, we really don't know what the story is. But again, it's a shot at the memorabilia industry.
Real quickly, what kind of trouble could Dak Prescott get in over this?
Well, who knows? I mean, the idea that there's an affidavit signed, and again, if you assume that these are not real, this constitutes fraud. I mean, you're saying you signed these presumably, and then you potentially didn't. So, I mean, this could go up to kind of a criminal level. It does constitute fraud if you say you did something and you essentially didn't. But I think there's a couple more details that are going to have to be filled in here. And right now, we're just relying on the parties involved to share what they know about the situation.
All right, stay tuned for this. Darren Ravel giving us the very latest here on the business of sports. We got much more coming up, including what moves the Celtics may be making in the future.